responsibility for ourselves. If we have a society where we recognize that our rights, our lives, and our liberties come to us in a natural, God-given way, we ought to have the right to keep the fruits of our labor, but we also have to assume a responsibility for all our actions, and we can't blame others, and we can't expect the government or our neighbors to bail us out at any time. Yeah. We've drifted a long way from that. The best test of a free society has been the United States. And we had the freest society, we had the richest society, we had the largest middle class, we had the most wealthy middle class ever. To tell you the truth, it's not that way anymore. The middle class is shrinking, and the people who are in the middle class have a lot of debt because they're bearing the burden of the debt of the whole country. So the middle class is shrinking, and because we don't have this free society where people assume responsibility for themselves, what we have is a redistribution of wealth by special interests. And that worked for a while because we were so rich, and the country was able to redistribute wealth and not cause too much harm. But now we've reached the end stages. Productivity is down, the wealth of the nation no longer exists, all we have is debt. We have wars that are going on that shouldn't exist, and therefore what they're doing in Washington is special interests, and it's on both sides of the aisle, are fighting for power and trying to redistribute the remaining portion of our wealth. That has to end because the wealth is ended. And the worst part of this has been in Washington that there's no recognition. They will not be honest with themselves and say that we have a spending problem, we have a debt problem, we have a government problem, and the solution can't be found by expanding the government and spending more money. To emphasize that point, I wanted to make a token cut in the first year of the presidency of $1 trillion. This week we heard the alternative budget. I don't think too many here would probably expect that the current president is going to offer us a budget with less government and less spending. But you would hope that the other party, their budget would do some good. Now the budget was offered this week. The Ryan budget actually spends less money than Obama's budget. But to me, it's so little and too late. It decides that it's going to cut proposed increases, but not real spending, and that the budget might get balanced in 30 years. That can't be serious. And one of the reasons why they don't get serious is they're not asking the right question. They think this is a budgetary problem where, well, we cut here and there and tinker here and cut back on this. It's going to happen. But it isn't a budgetary problem. It's a philosophy of government problem. So, what we had for the last 100 years is the transition from a true republic to a society that redistributes wealth. The government gets involved in issuing contracts, and powerful lobbyists control things. But also, we've accepted a notion of the entitlement system, which means redistribution of wealth for the various reasons. Most of the time, it was always to help poor people. Entitlements, yeah, people are having a tough time, so we're going to help them. Like we helped them with building houses. I mean, look how that worked out. We built houses, easy credit, programs to give homes to the poor, and guess what? The rich made more money off that. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the builders, and the banks made a lot of money. They went bankrupt, and guess what? They got bailed out, the middle class lost their jobs and lost their houses. So the entitlement system doesn't work. The entitlement system doesn't help the people it's intended to help, and it usually ends up badly. It ends up bankrupting the country. So the whole idea of an entitlement has to be questioned. Entitlement sounds pretty good. Entitlement almost sounds like a right. I'm entitled to this or this. You are entitled to the right to your life and your liberty. You ought to be entitled to your fruits and your labor. But you're not entitled to somebody else's life, and you're not entitled to somebody else's money, and that is not an entitlement. A right can't be be what somebody demands or insists on or forces people to give you. You should have a right to your life, but not to somebody else's life. And this is the big difference. You have to challenge that. Is that the role of government? To protect entitlements, or is it to protect your liberty? The Constitution says to protect your liberty, not to institute entitlement programs. Internationally, it's a very dangerous thing to do because we've embarked on that for 100 years. It's gotten a lot worse, especially in the last 10, 15 years. The neoconservative movement said that we have a moral responsibility to spread our goodness around the world. Spread our goodness around the world. That means that we tell other people what to do, other countries, and if we can prop up a dictator, we give them billions of dollars. If they don't do what we tell them to do, then we bomb their country. I suggest another alternative. Why don't we do neither? Why don't we just be friends with people? There's nothing entirely wrong with this idea of American exceptionalism. Because in many ways, if you look at our entire history, we have been an exceptional nation. We did have the freest society, we had sound money and property rights, and we did quite well. But this idea that we continue to be the only exceptional nation, and we have this moral authority to promote it and spread it by force, that doesn't add up. So if we do have good values, it's all canceled out. If you decide to occupy a country and bomb a country, you're no longer exceptional. You're exceptionally misled is what we are if we do that. So my suggestion is not only should we change our attitude about the entitlement system, we need to change our attitude about how we treat the rest of the people in the world. I would say we should follow the founders' advice. We should follow the Constitution. We should have a strong national defense. And evidently the military personnel right now believe that I'm on the right track because I get we find out that the military supports our campaign more than all the rest put together. So, such good years. That was during the Vietnam War, and there was a lot of nonsense going on there. We fought for 10 years, 60,000 of our people died, it cost us a lot of money, it ushered in the 1970s, which was stagflation, no jobs, and high inflation rate, and yet we continue to do the same things over and over again. But what we should think about is a policy of the Constitution means have a strong national defense. But how strong does that mean? Should we listen to the advice of Eisenhower when he said, be careful, don't let the war profiteers run the show. And this is what's happening. It's the military-industrial complex where they want more and more weapons. We have more weapons than everybody else put together. What country is on the verge of invading us? You know, this whole idea that we have to be fearful and that some third world country that doesn't even have an army or a navy or a weapon, that we have to go to war against them even though they don't have anything. It doesn't make any sense. Something we would have done very simple since World War II, if we had followed that, just to think about how many more dollars we'd have, how many lives wouldn't have been lost in all these years. We would have had a lot less death. And that is, follow the rules. The rules say that a president is not allowed to go to war unless there's a declaration of war made by the Congress endorsed by the people. Don't go to war unless there's a declaration of war. Now it's been fully explained to us in the committee not too long ago. Our Secretary of Defense gone on and testified when the senator asked him, well, where do you get this authority? He says, well, we have the authority. If we need authority, we'll get it from an international organization like the United Nations or NATO. That is morally wrong. It's unconstitutional. It actually violates the UN and NATO charters because it says you can't go to war unless you go back to your Congress and you get your permission. So they're violating the same rules, but they're making these declarations. And this is what's happened. We've let our government get totally out of control. But how did we ever allow the executive branch of government to make a unitary decision that it's okay when they decide that they should assassinate an American citizen, they're allowed to assassinate an American citizen? And when the president was asked, where do you get this authority? He says, well, I'm the president. And he says, I can do anything that I want to do that is not prohibited by the Constitution. That is not the way the Constitution is written. The president, and I would be that kind of a president, the president can only do those things that he is explicitly authorized to do. Appropriation Act, the Defense Emergency Military Powers, which have been on the books since the 1950s. But he rewrote them and wrote an executive order. Before these emergency powers are written there, which are unconstitutional, I've been arguing against these for years, but they give the power to the president to nationalize everything in case of an international crisis with war. But he rewrote it, renegotiated it with an executive order and said, even domestic people, he can make these declarations. So he went from doing an international people to a domestic upheaval, and which means that the law is on the books according to what the president believes, that he can nationalize everybody and anybody if there is an emergency determined by him.
Evil.
So you wonder what they continue to think about. You know, the National Defense Authorization Act was passed, January 1st. And this was given to him on a platter by the Congress. And that says that the president can use the military now to arrest American citizens. The military to arrest American citizens totally abolished the concept of posse comitatus, that we're not supposed to use the military. Not only can the military arrest an American citizen, he doesn't have to be charged with anything. The one senator on the Senate floor, when they asked him about this, he says, that is right. When we approach them and we tell them what's going on and they ask for attorney, and they ask for their attorney and their rights, tell them they get no attorneys. Which means they can be arrested, put in a secret prison, denied an attorney, no charges made, and kept indefinitely. That is not what America is all about. That needs to be repealed. We need to restore. But it's been going on a long time. Matter of fact, a couple of things that occurred after 9/11 were in planning stage anyway. One was called the Patriot Act. Anybody ever hear of the Patriot Act? Well, the Patriot Act had been floating around. Couldn't be passed because the Senate wasn't there, but immediately they saw that people were fearful, and rightfully so, about the consequences of 9/11. They said, this is the time to pass the Patriot Act, which, if it had been called by its proper name,
unpatriot.
The proper name was repealing the Fourth Amendment Act.
Yep.
That's what it is. And now, those individuals who may do investigations at the federal level can write their own search warrants. And with the military now being able to arrest the American people, they can write their own search warrants. This is what the revolution was fought about. They couldn't stand the idea of the British Army marching into the homes of the colonists and arresting people and taking goods and things out of their houses. So we are undermining so much of what we had, and now we're on the verge of going broke, and I think there is a great concern, not only by people like us worrying about the economy, but the people who